There's something in your drink, Black Waitress whispered. The billionaire exposed his best friend. What if the person you trusted most in this world was the one who wanted to destroy you? Marcus Holloway sat in his favorite corner booth at the Silver Oak, a restaurant he'd been coming to for 15 years, watching his best friend Adrian smile across the table like they were still those two broke college kids sharing instant ramen. The autumn rain tapped against the windows, and the warm glow of candlelight made everything feel safe and familiar. But safety is sometimes just an illusion we tell ourselves. When a young waitress named Celeste leaned close to Marcus's ear, her voice barely a whisper, those 4 words shattered everything he thought he knew. There's something in your drink. Her hand trembled slightly as she pulled back, her dark eyes darting toward Adrian with a fear that made Marcus's blood run cold. Sometimes the truth comes from the most unexpected places, delivered by the most unexpected people. Where are you watching from? Marcus and Adrian had been friends for 23 years, ever since they'd met as freshmen at Columbia University. Back then, Marcus was a scholarship kid from the Bronx with holes in his sneakers and dreams bigger than the Manhattan skyline. Adrian came from old money, the kind where your family name opened doors before you even knocked. But none of that mattered to them. They studied together, celebrated together, and when Marcus started his tech company in a cramped studio apartment, Adrian was right there, helping him code through countless sleepless nights. The company, Holloway Technologies, became one of the fastest-growing firms in the country. Marcus made his first billion before he turned 35. Through it all, Adrian remained his closest confidant, his right hand, the brother he'd never had by blood. They'd survived failures and celebrated victories, and Marcus trusted him with everything. His business decisions, his personal struggles, even the password to his personal accounts. That's what real friendship looked like, or so Marcus believed. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration. Marcus had just closed a deal that would expand their operations into 12 new countries, securing jobs for thousands of people and cementing their legacy. He'd chosen the Silver Oak because it was their place, where they'd celebrated every major milestone. The restaurant sat tucked away on a quiet street in the West Village, the kind of establishment where the staff remembered your name and your favorite table was always waiting. Celeste had been working at the Silver Oak for 8 months. At 26, she was putting herself through nursing school, taking night classes while working double shifts on weekends. Her grandmother, who'd raised her after her parents passed, always told her to pay attention to the small things, that God puts us in certain places at certain times for a reason. Tonight, Celeste had been assigned to the private dining section, an honor usually reserved for the senior staff. She'd noticed Adrian arrive early, before Marcus. Nothing unusual about that. Friends often arrived at different times. But then she'd seen him talking to Tommy, the bartender, requesting a specific scotch for Marcus. She'd watched Adrian's fingers move quickly, pulling something from his jacket pocket while Tommy's back was turned for just a second. It happened so fast she almost convinced herself she'd imagined it. But something in her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, telling her to trust what she'd seen. When Marcus arrived, all smiles and warm handshakes, Celeste felt her heart racing. She served their appetizers, poured their wine, and watched Adrian slide that special scotch toward Marcus with a toast about friendship and success. Marcus reached for the glass, raising it toward the light, admiring the amber color the way he always did with good scotch. That's when Celeste knew she had to act, even though her hands were shaking, even though she could lose her job, even though she was just a waitress interrupting powerful men. She'd approached the table under the guise of refilling their water glasses. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure they could hear it. As she leaned toward Marcus, pouring water into his glass with one hand, she'd whispered those 4 words that would change everything. The glass stopped halfway to Marcus's lips. His eyes met hers, searching for certainty, for truth. She gave the smallest nod toward Adrian, whose smile had frozen into something that didn't quite reach his eyes anymore. Marcus set the glass down slowly, his mind racing through possibilities. Maybe she was mistaken. Maybe this was some kind of misunderstanding. But Celeste's eyes held something he recognized, the kind of certainty that comes from witnessing truth, even when it's the last thing you want to see. He looked at Adrian, his friend of over 2 decades, and felt something crack inside his chest. Everything all right? Adrian asked, his voice carrying that familiar warmth that had comforted Marcus through his divorce, through his father's death, through every dark moment of his adult life. Just thought I saw something in the glass, Marcus said carefully, watching Adrian's face. You know how I am about my scotch. Adrian laughed, but it sounded different now, like music played slightly off-key. Always the perfectionist. Want me to get you another one? No, Marcus said, his hand covering the glass. I'm good. Actually, I think I'll switch to water. Big day tomorrow, need to keep my head clear. He saw something flicker across Adrian's face. Was it relief? Disappointment? Fear? 23 years of friendship, and suddenly Marcus couldn't read the man sitting across from him. Celeste moved away from their table, but Marcus caught the slight tremor in her shoulders. She was scared, and she'd risked something precious to warn him. That meant everything. As the evening continued, Marcus played along, laughing at Adrian's jokes, discussing business strategies, pretending everything was normal. But his mind was working through every detail of the past few months. The business deal they'd just closed. Adrian had pushed hard for Marcus to sign those papers quickly, unusually hard. The new investors Adrian had brought in. Marcus had never actually met them in person, had he? The security protocols Adrian had suggested changing just last week, giving him access to systems he'd never needed before. It was like watching a puzzle assemble itself in reverse, pieces falling into place to reveal a picture he'd been too trusting to see. His best friend, his brother, had been planning something. But what? And why? When Adrian excused himself to take a phone call, Marcus signaled to Celeste. She approached cautiously, her professionalism masking the worry in her eyes. Are you certain? He asked quietly. About what you saw? I watched him put something in your drink while the bartender wasn't looking, she said, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. I'm a nursing student. I know what I saw wasn't right. Marcus felt his world tilting. Thank you, he managed. You might have just saved my life. I have a grandmother who taught me that silence in the face of wrong is the same as doing wrong yourself, Celeste said softly. I couldn't stay silent. If this moment touched your heart, if you believe in the courage it takes to speak truth to power, please give this story a thumbs up. When Adrian returned, Marcus made a decision. He wouldn't confront him here, not yet. He needed to know the full extent of the betrayal, needed to understand what Adrian had planned. Because if your best friend of 23 years wanted to hurt you, there had to be a reason bigger than anything Marcus could imagine in this moment. And he needed to find out what that reason was before it destroyed everything he'd built. That night, Marcus didn't go home. Instead, he went to his private office, the one even Adrian didn't know about, and started digging. He'd built his fortune on understanding patterns, on seeing what others missed, and now he turned that same ruthless analysis on his own life. Every email, every transaction, every conversation, he reviewed it all with new eyes. What he found made him sick. Adrian had been systematically stealing from the company for 3 years, creating shell corporations, funneling money through accounts Marcus had never authorized. But it was worse than theft. Adrian had been in contact with their biggest competitor, sharing proprietary technology, selling out everything they'd built together. The deal Marcus had just signed? It gave Adrian's secret partners access to patents worth hundreds of millions. And that drink tonight, Marcus had it tested by a private lab. It contained a sedative strong enough to make him violently ill, maybe worse. The plan was clear: get Marcus sick enough to miss tomorrow's board meeting, where Adrian would push through final approval of the deal before anyone could examine it too closely. Marcus sat in his office as dawn broke over the city, feeling a loneliness he hadn't known since he was that scared kid from the Bronx, wondering if he'd ever belong anywhere. He'd given Adrian everything: his trust, his friendship, a position in a company worth billions. And Adrian had repaid him with betrayal so calculated it had taken years to execute. But what haunted Marcus most wasn't the money, or even the betrayal. It was remembering all those moments they'd shared. Adrian holding him when he cried after his father's funeral. Adrian being the best man at his wedding, and later, the friend who brought him soup when that marriage fell apart. Were any of those moments real? Or had Adrian been playing a long game even then, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? Marcus thought about Celeste, a young woman working her way through nursing school, who'd risked everything to warn a stranger. She'd shown more integrity in one whispered warning than his best friend had shown in 23 years. The contrast was almost too much to bear. By the time his lawyer arrived at 7 a.m., Marcus had made his decision. He would protect the company, protect his employees, and he would confront Adrian, but not with anger. He wanted to understand. He needed to know when the person he'd loved like a brother had decided to become his enemy. The board meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. Marcus arrived early, watching his executives file in, seeing Adrian enter last with that confident smile that used to make Marcus feel like they could conquer anything together. Adrian's face changed when he saw Marcus standing there, healthy and alert, instead of sick in a hospital bed. "You look well," Adrian said carefully. "Feeling okay?" "Never better," Marcus replied. "Thanks to someone who actually cared about my well-being." Have you ever faced a betrayal that shattered everything you believed about someone you loved? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our pain helps us heal. The meeting began, but Marcus had already set everything in motion. His lawyers were ready. The evidence was compiled. And in this room, surrounded by witnesses, he was about to expose his best friend's betrayal and ask the question that had haunted him all night. Why? "Before we begin," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him, "there's something this board needs to know about the deal we're here to finalize." Adrian's face went pale. Around the table, executives shifted in their seats, sensing the tension crackling through the air like electricity before a storm. Marcus laid out everything: the theft, the corporate espionage, the falsified documents, the attempted drugging. He presented bank records, email trails, recorded phone conversations. The evidence was devastating, irrefutable. With each revelation, he watched Adrian shrink in his chair, the confident man Marcus had known dissolving into someone desperate and cornered. "But what I want to know," Marcus said, his voice breaking for the first time, "is why. Adrian, we built this together. I would have given you anything. I did give you everything. So tell me, when did I become your enemy instead of your friend?" The room fell silent. Adrian's hands trembled as he gripped the edge of the table. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "You want to know when?" Adrian's eyes glistened with tears that Marcus couldn't tell were real or performed. "It was my father's funeral. 5 years ago. You couldn't make it because you were in Tokyo closing a deal. Do you even remember?" Marcus felt his stomach drop. He did remember. He'd sent flowers, called to apologize, promised to visit soon. "My father's last words were about you," Adrian continued, his voice cracking. Even on his deathbed, he talked about Marcus Holloway, the brilliant kid from the Bronx who made something of himself. "He never talked about me like that. His own son. I stood there watching him die, and he was proud of you." The pain in Adrian's voice was real, and it cut through Marcus like a knife. "So you decided to destroy me? To steal from me? To drug me? Because your father was proud of me." "I decided to prove I was better," Adrian said. "That I could outsmart you, outmaneuver you. That I was worth something beyond being Marcus Holloway's sidekick." "You were never my sidekick," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were my brother. You were the family I chose." "And I was in your shadow," Adrian replied. "Every single day." The board voted unanimously to press charges. Security escorted Adrian from the building while Marcus watched, feeling like he was burying someone who'd died years ago without him noticing. But as painful as this was, Marcus knew it had to be done. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, even when you understand the pain that caused them. After the meeting ended, Marcus did something he'd never done before. He went back to the Silver Oak in the middle of the day. Celeste was there, setting up for the dinner shift. When she saw him, her eyes widened with concern. "Is everything okay?" If you've been with us this far, if this story has moved you, Please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales of courage, truth, and the unexpected angels who appear in our lives when we need them most. Thanks to you, Marcus said. Everything is going to be okay. Can we talk? They sat in that same corner booth where everything had unraveled the night before. Marcus told Celeste everything, about Adrian, about the betrayal, about how her courage had saved not just his life, but his company and the livelihoods of thousands of employees who depended on it. I don't know what made you risk your job, your safety, to warn a stranger, Marcus said, but I'm grateful beyond words. Celeste smiled softly. My grandmother raised me on her own after my parents died. She cleaned houses, worked 3 jobs, and never complained once. She taught me that character isn't about what you do when people are watching, it's about what you do when nobody would ever know the difference. I knew what I saw. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. Marcus felt something shift in his chest. Here was this young woman, working her way through nursing school, living the same kind of struggle he'd once known, showing him what real integrity looked like. It reminded him of who he used to be, before the billions, before the success made him forget what mattered. How much do you owe for nursing school? He asked. Celeste looked surprised. Sir, I wasn't telling you this for. I know, Marcus interrupted gently. But humor me. How much? About 47,000, she said quietly. I've been paying it down slowly. Marcus pulled out his phone and made a call to his accountant. Within minutes, it was done. Your tuition is paid. All of it. And there's a scholarship fund being established in your grandmother's name for other students like you. People working their way through nursing school with integrity and courage. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being exactly who you are, Marcus replied. Say you'll keep speaking up when you see something wrong, even when it's scary. The world needs more people like you. Over the following months, Marcus rebuilt his company with new leadership, people he vetted carefully for both skill and character. Adrian pleaded guilty to fraud and corporate espionage, receiving a 5-year sentence. Marcus didn't attend the trial. Some chapters of your life need to close completely before you can write new ones. But he did attend Celeste's nursing school graduation 2 years later. He sat in the audience next to her grandmother, watching this young woman who'd saved his life walk across that stage with her head held high. She'd earned it, not just the degree, but the pride of knowing she'd stood up for what was right when it mattered most. As Marcus drove home that evening, he thought about trust and betrayal, about the family we're born into and the family we choose. He'd lost a friend, but he'd gained something more valuable, a reminder of who he wanted to be. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes they're young waitresses with grandmother's wisdom and the courage to whisper truth when everyone else stays silent. If you enjoyed this story of courage, betrayal, and redemption, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your own experiences with trust and betrayal, and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that remind us of the goodness that still exists in this world. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May you always have the courage to speak truth, and may you always recognize the angels who appear in unexpected places.